Hi everyone. As I'd indicated before, I wanted to take an opportunity to make a brief video to demonstrate how to make the graphs that are called for and necessary as part of our population lab. So earlier today we headed over to the cemetery. We collected our data for the Ghost of Populations Past lab. And as part of completing this lab, you'll be assembling life tables, and then also are asked to make two series of graphics using Excel. Right, so the first of these is going to ask you to produce bar graphs, or what Excel calls column graphs, plotting mortality rate as a function of age. And we're going to add data to that for both males and females. Right? And so you'll actually make two graphs for this one section. You'll make one graph that is a pre-1875 graph, and a second graph which is a post-1875 graph. Again, each of those will contain data for both males and females. The second graph that we will make is a single graph in which we will add 4 lines to. We are going to plot the log of LX with, again, LX is survivorship. We're going to plot the column log of LX as a function of age, and we're going to plot a line on there for each of our 4 sets of data. Pre-1875 males, pre-1875 females, post-1875 males, and post-1875 females. So I want to take just a moment in Excel to show you how to do this in case you're less familiar or less comfortable with using Excel to do this. So these are our data that we collected here this morning. Here are our raw data. And then I've completed 2 of the life tables already so that I have some data to graph. Obviously, you will have first completed all 4 of the life tables to allow you to do these graphics. When you are ready to graph, what I would encourage you to do is just to have your cursor off to the side so that it's not currently selecting any data. And we're going to go up here to the top, and we are going to insert a graphic. So I'm going to go to insert, and then there are a number of different styles of graphs or charts that you can choose from. And for the mortality graphs, we're going to use this column chart. So I'm going to select that. And I always recommend selecting just kind of the most basic graphic to use. When I do so, you'll notice that basically I start with a clean slate. I basically just have a white field. And that's a good thing because now we can go in and actually tell Excel exactly what we want to graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on that white space. Right? So if I right-click, or if you're using a Mac, if you do a 2-finger click, when I do that, I get a drop-down menu, and I want to go to Select Data. Within Select Data, I then have basically a new kind of a screen that appears. It may look a little bit different if you're using a Mac versus a PC, but in general, it is going to operate the same way. Right? The way that Excel thinks about sets of data is as series. Right? And so we want to add a series of data. And to do that, I'm going to click this plus button. If you're using a PC, I believe it says add, that you're going to add a series of data. So when I select that, it now says series 1. And over here, it allows me to name it. Right? So I will name this series pre-1875 males. Right? And then below that, it is going to ask me for my Y values. That is what I actually want to graph. So I'm going to delete what is currently in there. And if I click this little button at the very end of that, it's going to minimize that screen. There it goes. It's going to minimize that screen and now allow me the opportunity to go over here and actually select the data that I want to plot. Right? And so what I want to graph for my Y data are these values for QX. Again, this is the rate of mortality. And I'm just going to click and drag down that column to select those data. I'll come back up to this box and click that button again. It gets me back into that full view. And then the last thing that I need to do down here is control my horizontal or my category axis label. That's basically the labels that are going to appear on the x-axis. What I want to appear there are my ages, my age intervals. Right? So I'm going to, again, minimize that screen by clicking that button. I will come over to this table, and then I'm going to drag and select down that column to select those age intervals. That's going to serve as my data labels. Right? And I'll come back up here and open that up again. Now, you'll remember on each of our mortality plots, we're going to have 2 sets of data. We're going to have pre-1875 males, but then we also want to have pre-1875 females. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add another set of data. So I'm going to hit that plus button again, or the add button. I will name it, in this case, pre-1875 females. I will select the Y values that I'm going to plot. Okay. Drag this off to the side. So I'm in the Y values. I'm going to select these Y values down that column. And then for my horizontal labels or my x-axis labels, I will again select those same age intervals just like we did previously. And now I have my two sets of data. I have everything selected. When I click OK, now it generates a plot, right, that is going to illustrate what is actually being graphed on there. And we're not quite done yet. We need to modify this graphic a little bit so that it's a little bit more informative. And really you can do that by having the graphic selected like this. We can do that by coming up to this Add Chart element. Right? And when I click on that, we basically get a big drop-down menu. The first thing I'm going to do is actually put a legend on there so that I know which is which. So I know which is my pre-1875 males and which are my pre-1875 females. Blue being males, the orange being the females. And then I also need to put some axis labels on this graphic. So again, if I go back up to the chart element and I go to axis titles, I can add both a horizontal, and then again, if I go back to that, go back to axis titles, and I can add a vertical axis label. And now I can simply click on those in those boxes, those text boxes, and modify that. Right? So my y-axis was mortality rate, right? Like so, and that's basically just a fraction of 1. Right? So I'm just going to leave that as my label, and then my x-axis label. Let me minimize that. My x-axis label then is my age intervals. Right? So these are my age intervals, right? And that's obviously just in years, like so. Okay. I can get rid of this chart title. Really, we don't need the title on that graphic, and that graph is done. Right? That is really all we have to do. We would make a second mortality plot that is really a very similar plot of that, but it would be graphing our post-1875 data for both males and females. Okay. The third graph that you were going to make, again, you were going to make a survivorship plot. You were going to plot log of LX, and you were going to graph all 4 sets of data on that one graphic. Right? Again, I will just show you how to add 2 of those quickly. You will do the same thing to add the third and fourth data sets. So I have my cursor kind of off to the side. I will again go up to Insert. And this time we are going to use a line graph. Okay, so we're going to select the line graph. I always select just the most basic one here in the corner. And I'll just move that off to the side so we can see things a little bit better. Make it a little larger. Just like I did previously, once I have this white space, I'm going to do a right click or a 2-finger click on that. I will go into Select Data, and I see a very similar menu as to previous. Right? Again, the way that Excel thinks about sets of data is as series. I'm going to add a series of data. Will always be the first thing that I do. I then need to name it. Right? So this first set we will do pre-1875 males again. And again, it asks me to tell it what I want to graph as the Y values. In this case, I'm going to select the data for the log of LX. I can just click and drag down that column. And then once again, I have to tell it the horizontal or the x-axis labels. That's going to be our age intervals. So I will come over here again, click and drag down and select my age intervals. Right? So that is the first set of data. I can then add a second set. Right? Now I will add my pre-1875 female data. Okay. Same exact manner, I will come in here into the Y values, minimize that. I will select my log of LX data that I want to graph. I need to again tell it what the horizontal or the category axis labels are. That is my age intervals. I'll click and drag there. And again, you are going to add the other 2 sets of data, the post-1875 male and female data. I didn't complete that yet. So I'm going to stop there. And when I click OK, now I have that graphic. Just like we did previously, we need to modify this a bit. And we'll get rid of that chart title. Basically, everything to do this is going to be under this Add Chart element. Okay, so Add Chart element, I again can go up here. I will go down to my legend. I'll make sure that I have a legend over on the side so I know which data set is which. And then I can add my axis labels or my axis titles. I'll add both a primary horizontal and I will again add a primary vertical. I can then go in and modify these, right? So I can go in and plot this as survivorship on my y-axis. My x-axis, once again, is just going to be age intervals. And that's in years, like so. That really is as simple as it is. It's not all that difficult once you get a little bit of a hang of it and take a little practice. I hope this video helps you. And again, as you're completing these, if and when you have any questions, just let me know.